But we're very honored to have Admiral Jim Hallaway here to cut the ribbon and kick off our exhibit for this year, which we're very proud of. We think we've done a very fine job in it, but you'll be the judge of that. We have a few, Bob and I reviewed it yesterday, and we have a few minor changes to make, but I think it does portray the excitement, the confusion in battle, and you will hear a lot back there, but when you're up here sitting here, the deck also moves as the guns fire, so that's a good part. And everybody can come up and sit, probably before you have a drink, and sit on the deck. And so, without further ado, I'll introduce Admiral Jim Hallaway to go ahead. You can stand, sit, or whatever you want to do.
I think I'll probably do that stand.
Yeah, guys are height. Best.
Are we all set?
Yes, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you so much, Bruce. This is my little cheat slip that I got from Bill Roden, and said, give me some advice. He said, do not wear a short sleeve shirt that shows the wings tattooed on your shoulder. And then the second thing is, remember, port is left and starboard is right. I appreciate a guy that was really a wonderful companion with me after I retired. We did a lot of sailing together. What I want to tell you is what you're going to see. And you're going to see a reenactment of a battle, a real battle. And it's not going to be a fiction battle that brings in a lot of exciting things. It's taken from the log of the ship in which I was flying my flag. And it's taken from the recordings of the communications that were sent out during this battle. This was the Battle of Haifa. And why am I involved in it? Because during this battle, I was standing right here. I guess I should have said like this. I was standing right like this, facing that direction on the bridge of the USS Newport News, the Navy's final heavy cruiser, a real heavy hitter in the Navy. And the Joint Chiefs of Staff had directed Commander 7th Fleet, who happened to be myself at the time, to put together a strike group to go into Haiphong Harbor and teach the North Vietnamese a lesson. I was a little upset with that. As a matter of fact, I went back to the JCS and said, you have to realize that the Gulf or the entrance to Haiphong is 300 miles north or away from our front lines. It was a hell of a long distance. And I also want to check here the fact that I was not totally new to shore bombardment, even though I was at that time an aviator, because for a year I was gunnery officer of a destroyer, a Fletcher-class destroyer in World War II. And that was most of our employment, except on one very spectacular night that in Surigao Straits, when as gunnery officer we managed to fire 5 torpedo salvo, and at least one of those torpedoes hit the Japanese battleship Mayashima. I hope I got that pronunciation right. But anyway, it was one hell of an evening, and that was the good part of a night's action. I've got to tell you about our sister ship, the USS Grant, also was in that torpedo attack, and the Grant was hit by a lucky shot, I claim, probably an 8-inch or a 6-inch, but she went dead in the water. And that destroyer was dead in the water between the two forces, the Japanese and us. Everybody took a shot at it. It was so tragic. In fact, the Denver, in the post-battle analysis, apparently hit them with 11 salvos. So this was the part of a night action that had me worried. And so I had told the JCS I was not too much in favor of it. And having done that and told to go ahead, I said, well, I guess I better ride along. And I almost was. Well, anyway, we went into this this action, and what had happened was that the intelligence had not told us that PT boats were operating out of Haifa. They didn't know it, I'm sure, but as we were departing from the gun line, we had 4 ships, 2 heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, and 2 destroyers. And the heavy cruiser was the Newport News, as I pointed out. And as we completed the run, I won't ask those of you who have served on a ship during shore bombardment your experience here, because I'm sure almost every arm would go up. But this was not a regular, normal shore bombardment. This was a very important battle. It was, code name was Lion's Den, you know, the obvious relationship. And it was part of the President's decision to end the war in Vietnam. And his decision was exemplified in Operation Linebacker. Linebacker was the last major operation of the Vietnamese War. And what it did was accept the fact that we could not win in the South. We had, every time the U.S. would add 30,000 foot soldiers, the enemy would add 50,000. We took all the ground forces out. At the time of this battle, there were no U.S. ground forces in Vietnam, in South Vietnam, except for instructors. So the winning the war was on the back of the Navy and the Air Force. And so keep that in mind as we talk about what we are doing here. The idea was to take these 4 ships up into Haiphong. Why? Because in May of that year, we had mined the approaches to Haiphong. Not one ship got in or out of Haiphong Harbor from May 1972. It was absolutely stopped. The imports of weapons went to 0 by sea. And remember, that was what we had to do was stop the SA-2s and the aircraft and the tanks and so forth. And it was the President's decision, with Kissinger pushing it very hard, that by God we were going to go into the source and destroy them. So there were still a great deal of these munitions in the warehouses in Haiphong, and they had to be gouged out. So that was our effort to put about, I think it was 900 rounds of 8-inch ammunition into the storehouses in Haiphong. Now, and just to give you a feel for the 8-inch shell, that was the size of the weapon that was the Chinese field piece that gave us such trouble in the ground. When the Marines at Quezon were bombarded, it was essentially their 8-inch gun. So it would be a hell of a fight because they'd be shooting back at us. As we turned away, as I say, I was standing here, staying out of the captain's hair, he had tactical command. This is something for all you young people who are going on your command now. A tactical command lets the man in the driver's seat run things, but the commander-in-chief has to be along to make sure that it goes the way the national plan is. As the firing line ceased fire, and you hear that here, and the word was ceased firing, there was suddenly a report from the radar, actually from combat, saying, we have 2 high-speed targets moving at 40 knots in our direction, and they're coming out of Haiphong Harbor. And the captain said, take them under fire. And I said, Captain, we can't take them under fire because they're the same size as the Karst. There were coral islands, or rocky islands, that on the radar gave the same signal as a PT boat. So the PT boats every now and then would be picked up on the radar, but the ship's guns weren't firing. And the problem was because it was dark, it was night, and things were pretty much a mess. And I was concerned, and I said, Captain, what are you going to do now? And he said, I'm not sure. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I think we can clear this whole thing out if we can see what's happening. And I can tell you that we've got Navy airplanes in the air in the vicinity, because if you look over Hanoi, you will see these pyramids of machine gun gun fire, and those are the North Vietnamese gunners shooting at our planes coming in from the carrier. Let's see if this works. So I looked around the bridge, and they're right in the same spot as the transmitter is on the flagship. Was the guard channel painted red, and I picked it up and I said, all naval aircraft that are on guard channel and can hear me, heads up. This is Blackbeard. That was my call and given to me by a friendly aide. But this is Blackbeard, and we are involved in a firefight on the surface down here, and we can't tell friend from foe, and we can't tell enemy from the ground. And do any of you have any flares, and can you come down and help us out? And that's when we called in Naval Air Support, and two young pilots, old JGs, were going into their mission carrying the proper munitions for their munition over Hanoi, and we called them in to do the job. They did the job. The cruisers and destroyers finished off the enemy, and we sailed home at night. And I think due to the fact that everybody did what they were supposed to do it well is the only reason I'm here right now. So on with the show.